Liam stood frozen at the doorway, his heart pounding. His wife Emily was laughing softly, with another man. Their hands brushed. Their eyes met in a way that sent a dagger through Liam's chest. Was this the moment his worst fears came true? For weeks he had sensed something was off. Late-night calls, secretive whispers, that distant look in her eyes. But nothing could have prepared him for the truth he was about to uncover. Liam never thought his marriage would come to this. He and Emily had been inseparable once, college sweethearts who built a life together on love, laughter, and dreams of forever. He still remembered the way she used to light up when he walked through the door, how she would rest her head on his shoulder and whisper about her day, like he was the only person in the world who mattered. But something had changed. At first, it was subtle. Late-night messages she wouldn't explain. Mysterious phone calls that ended the moment he entered the room. The way she started pulling away, her laughter feeling forced, her touch hesitant. The woman who once looked at him like he was her safe place now seemed like a stranger. And Liam, who prided himself on being logical, strong, and in control, felt something he never had before. Doubt. He tried to ignore it. Maybe she was just stressed. Maybe work was taking a toll on her. But no matter how much he told himself there was nothing wrong, the feeling in his chest wouldn't leave. Then came the moment he could no longer ignore. One evening, he came home early, hoping to surprise her with dinner, something they hadn't done in months. But as he stepped inside, he heard it. Laughter. Soft, warm, and unfamiliar. And then, a man's voice. Liam's world tilted. He followed the sound, his heart hammering with every step. The sight that met him stole the breath from his lungs. Emily, with another man. They were close. Too close. Their hands brushed as she smiled at him in a way Liam hadn't seen in months. His mind raced. Was this why she had been so distant? Had he already lost her without even realizing it? A storm of emotions raged inside him. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak. He had given her everything. And now, this? But Liam didn't know the truth yet. He didn't know that what he was about to discover would change everything. And when he finally learned why Emily had been acting so distant, it would break him. Liam had always been the kind of man who kept his heart guarded, calculated, disciplined, and in control. That was who he was. Love had never been a part of his plans, not until Emily came crashing into his life like an unexpected storm. They met in the most ordinary way, on a cold autumn afternoon in a quiet bookstore. Liam had been lost in his thoughts, browsing through business journals, when a soft gasp made him turn. A woman, barely balancing a tower of books in her arms, had nearly stumbled right into him. Instinctively, he reached out, steadying her before the books could tumble to the ground. She looked up at him, cheeks flushed, strands of chestnut hair falling over her face. I didn't see you there," she murmured, an embarrassed smile tugging at her lips. He should have just nodded and walked away. But something about her, maybe the way her eyes shone with unspoken stories, or the way she clutched those books like they were her entire world, made him pause. "You read all of these?" he asked, his voice unintentionally gruff. She laughed softly. "Only when I want to escape reality." That was how it started. A simple conversation about books, about stories that made the world feel a little less heavy. He hadn't realized it then, but that moment had been the beginning of his own story, the one he never expected to write. From that day on, Emily became a presence in his life that he couldn't shake. She was different. She didn't fit into his world of rigid schedules and carefully calculated decisions. She was warmth, unpredictability, life itself. She saw the parts of him no one else did, the loneliness he never spoke of, the exhaustion behind his controlled exterior. And against all odds, she loved him anyway. Their love had been intense, overwhelming. He still remembered the way she used to hold his hand in crowded places, like she was anchoring him to the moment. The way she would tilt her head and study him when he was lost in thought, as if trying to read the pages he kept hidden. But love, no matter how deep, wasn't always enough. Liam had always believed that strength meant pushing through alone, that burdens weren't meant to be shared. So, when life started closing in, When the pressures of his career, his responsibilities, and his fears of failing her became too much, he withdrew. Emily had tried to reach him. She had stood by his side, waiting for him to let her in. But Liam had been too consumed by his own battles to see that he was losing her in the process. And then came the moment everything changed. One night, after yet another argument laced with frustration and silence, Emily had finally asked, "Liam, do you even want this anymore?" The pain in her voice had been unbearable, but instead of answering, he had let the silence stretch. Because the truth was, he didn't know how to love her without feeling like he was failing her. So, he walked away first. And as he left, he never once looked back, because he knew that if he did, he wouldn't have the strength to leave at all. But now, standing in their home, watching her smile at another man the way she used to smile at him, he couldn't help but wonder, had she finally moved on? Or had he been too blind to see the truth all along? Liam stood frozen in the doorway, his breath caught in his throat. Emily sat across from the man, her smile soft, her posture relaxed, too relaxed. Her fingers brushed against his as she reached for a glass of water. It was fleeting, barely even noticeable. But to Liam, it felt like a knife twisting in his chest. He should have walked in, said something, anything. But instead, he just stood there, paralyzed by a feeling he never thought he would experience. Jealousy. Why now? For months, he had convinced himself that Emily's distance was temporary, that whatever was pulling her away from him could be fixed with time. But now, staring at the undeniable closeness between his wife and a man he had never seen before, Liam realized something terrifying. Had she already let go? His fists clenched at his sides as his mind raced. Who was this man? How long had this been going on? Was this why Emily had been distant? Why she had spent so many late nights out? Why she had stopped looking at him the way she used to? Every moment they had shared together flashed in his mind. The way she used to wake him up with soft kisses. The way she used to sneak into his office just to bring him coffee. The way she used to reach for his hand when she thought no one was watching. Had it all been a lie? Emily's perspective. Emily could feel the weight of his stare before she even turned. She glanced over her shoulder and met Liam's eyes, dark, stormy, filled with something unreadable. Her breath hitched. She knew this moment would come, but she wasn't ready. Liam had always been distant, but never like this. He was right there, yet so far away. And the truth was, she didn't know if he would ever come back to her. Not really. For months she had waited, hoped, tried. But loving Liam had always been like holding on to something that was slipping through her fingers. He loved her, she knew that. But love wasn't enough when he kept pushing her away. She had begged him to talk, to let her in. But Liam had walls no one could break through, and she was tired of bleeding from the effort of trying. So, when someone else had finally given her the attention she had been craving, someone who listened, who saw her, who didn't make her feel like she was asking for too much, she hadn't stopped it. She hadn't done anything wrong. Had she? Then why did her heart clench with guilt as she held Liam's gaze? Liam's perspective. Liam swallowed hard. A war was raging inside him, anger, heartbreak, and something deeper, something raw. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless. He had always thought he had time, that no matter how broken things became, Emily would always be there, that no matter how many times he pulled away, she would always reach for him. But what if he had been wrong? What if this time she wasn't waiting for him to come back? What if she had already moved on? The thought nearly crushed him. Still, he had to know. He had to hear it from her. Taking a deep breath, Liam stepped forward, his voice quieter than he intended, but filled with everything he couldn't say. "Emily, who is he?" She looked at him, her expression unreadable. And in that moment, Liam knew. Whatever answer she was about to give would change everything. Liam's question hung in the air like a blade between them. "Emily, who is he?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her fingers tightened around the glass in front of her, her knuckles turning white. The man beside her shifted slightly, sensing the tension, but Emily didn't acknowledge him. Her eyes stayed locked on Liam's, filled with something he couldn't decipher. Liam's chest tightened. Say something. Anything. He needed to hear her voice, needed to know if the worst of his fears was about to come true. Then she finally spoke. He's my doctor, Liam. Silence. The words didn't make sense at first. His doctor? Liam's gaze flickered to the man, who looked back at him with neither guilt nor arrogance, just quiet understanding. A doctor, not a lover. Something sharp twisted in Liam's gut. His heart pounded as his mind raced. Why would she need a doctor she never told me about? His voice was rough when he spoke. For what? Emily hesitated, then slowly stood. She wasn't hiding now. She was facing him head-on, no longer retreating, no longer avoiding. For months, I wanted to tell you, she said, her voice trembling but strong. I waited for the right moment, but you were always too busy, too distant. And then, after a while, I stopped trying, because I realized you didn't see me anymore. Liam's pulse roared in his ears. His world felt unsteady. Emily, just tell me what's going on. She inhaled sharply, and for the first time in a long time, he saw it, the pain, the exhaustion, the fear she had been carrying alone. I've been sick, Liam, she whispered. Really sick. His breath caught. She took a step closer, searching his face for something, understanding maybe. Hope. I didn't want to worry you. I didn't want to become just another burden on your already heavy shoulders. So I handled it alone. And she motioned toward the doctor. He was there when I needed support. Liam felt like the ground beneath him had cracked open. All this time, all the late nights, the distance, the whispered phone calls. It wasn't because she was cheating. It was because she was fighting. And he hadn't even noticed. His throat tightened. Emily. His voice barely came out. She swallowed hard, blinking back tears. I needed you, Liam. And you weren't there. The words shattered him. He had spent so much time fearing that he was losing her to another man, so much time letting his own insecurities consume him that he had missed the truth. She wasn't slipping away. She was fading. And now, standing in front of him, she was giving him one last chance. Tell me you still love me, she whispered, her voice breaking. Tell me you'll fight for me now. Because if you can't, I need to know. His hands trembled. His mind screamed at him to speak, to pull her into his arms and promise her everything. But what if he had already failed beyond repair? What if she was asking for something he didn't deserve? Emily took a shaky breath. If you want me to stay, Liam, say something. The moment stretched. Everything was at stake, and for the first time in his life, Liam had to decide whether love was worth fighting for before it was too late. The silence between them felt endless. Emily's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, her breath unsteady. She had laid everything bare, placed her heart in his hands one last time. Now, all she could do was wait. Liam's chest ached. His entire world had shifted in the span of a few minutes, and now he saw the truth clearer than ever. He had been looking at the wrong enemy all along. It wasn't another man that had threatened his marriage. It was himself, his own fears, his own inability to let her in when she needed him most. She had fought this battle alone, because he had given her no choice. His fingers twitched at his sides, his heart hammering. He had spent so long building walls around himself that he never realized the one person who truly mattered had been on the other side, knocking, waiting. And now she was ready to walk away. Emily shifted slightly, her resolve cracking as she whispered, I can't do this anymore, Liam. Her voice was small, as if she hated the words she was saying, but knew she had to. Panic flared inside him. No, he couldn't lose her. Before he could think, his feet moved. His hands reached out, grasping hers, not forcefully, not desperately, just enough to make her stop, to make her feel him, to make her know he was still here. Wait. His voice was raw, broken, filled with everything he had never said before. Please don't go. Emily froze. He exhaled shakily, his grip on her fingers tightening. I messed up. I should have seen you. I should have been there. His voice cracked, but he didn't care. He had spent years hiding behind a mask of control, but none of that mattered anymore. "I love you, Emily. I never stopped." She inhaled sharply, her lips parting, but no words came out. Liam swallowed hard, his heart pounding. "Let me fix this. Let me fight this time." His voice was pleading now, but it wasn't weakness. It was the strongest thing he had ever done. "Please, let me be the man you deserved all along." Emily's eyes filled with fresh tears, and for the first time in months, she let out a soft, broken laugh. "Liam." He held his breath, waiting, praying. Then, slowly, she squeezed his hands back. It was small, a simple gesture, but to Liam, it felt like everything. The doctor cleared his throat softly, reminding them he was still there. Liam turned to him, his expression unreadable. "Tell me everything," he said firmly. Every detail, every treatment, every option. Emily's breath hitched. He looked back at her, his gaze steady, unwavering. "We're in this together now." Her chin trembled, and for the first time in a long time, hope flickered in her eyes. Outside, the world moved on. But in that moment, between them, something shifted. Maybe love hadn't been lost. Maybe this was just the beginning. Love isn't just about the good moments. It's about choosing each other even in the hardest ones. Liam nearly lost Emily, not because he didn't love her, but because he let fear and doubt build walls between them. He waited too long to fight, and when the truth finally came out, he realized love was never the enemy. His own silence was. So ask yourself, what would you do if the person you loved was slipping away? Not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. Would you fight for them? Would you break down the walls before it was too late? Sometimes love stories aren't about perfect endings. They're about finding the courage to fight for one. If love knocked at your door one last time, would you answer